Hey guys, and welcome to the next video in our TESTLAB series. We are going to be looking at backup solutions today, and we are going to be installing DPM 2016, and we're going to be installing it with SQL 16. Now, I know there's a lot of fuss around on the internet saying, well, hey, you've got to install SQL 14 and then do an in-place upgrade to 16. Well, yes, you can, but it's much tidier to install 16 from scratch. So that is what we're going to do. Now, it does work as long as you do things in a specific order, and that order we are going to cover today. So without further ado, let's get going. Da 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 da. So here we have a freshly prepared VM, which we're going to install SQL 16 directly onto. Now, there's a couple of caveats that we need to be aware of, which is mainly to install SQL under a domain account. You cannot use local SQL accounts. DPM will throw it out when you attempt to install it. So that's one of the things that we need to remember, and also to install reporting services. So we'll go for database engine, and we go for reporting services. I always chuck in a full text as well. Don't need anything else. Remember, with SQL 16, there is no management tools. And also, actually, while I'm discussing management tools, you can only install SSMS 16.5. If you install 17.3, it does not work. It has to be the older release at this moment in time. It is a known fault. There is Microsoft blogs on that. So just be aware if you're going to install Management Studio onto the box. So here we have our accounts. So I'm going to put in a domain account. Now I've created a service account. I'm going to change that to automatic. Put in your password. Same for here, and also your reporting. Now I use a different account for reporting. So just pop your passwords in. Change the collation to that CP1 CIAS. Now that's passed validation, which is good. Now, what you want to do here is add in basically the privileges of other users that can get into the database, so you don't get locked out. So I always add in domain admins and any particular CSA SQL enterprise admins. I'm just going to add myself. I don't have any groups at the moment, but normally you would add in a SQL like an admin group, so anybody who's part of that group then would be able to access the database if necessary. Now I'm going to be installing all the data directories because it's only a demo. I'm going to be installing them all on the same drive. Now you know full well to split this out for IO purposes if you need to. Hit next, and then install and configure. Now there's your configuration file if you wish to keep a copy of the settings. So while that's installing, you may have noticed at the beginning I did not do any updates, and there is a reason for that. You must install SQL 16 RTM. You cannot upgrade it to Service Pack 1 or any cumulative updates. That is what will break the DPM installation. It has to stay as RTM. So you would then upgrade with Service Packs afterwards once DPM is installed, but not for the initial installation. So just remember that. Keep it as the RTM copy. Do not update it. Do not patch it. And that is the way that we get it in and get it going. Okay, so once this is installed, we'll come straight back. So once SQL is installed, the next thing to do is install the Management Studio 6.5. If you try to install DPM at this point, it will throw up an error saying that Management Studio is not available. So we'll go through that. There's nothing to do on here. It is just a time waiting thing. So we'll let this install. Once SQL Management Studio is installed, the first thing we'll do is a reboot, because we will more than likely get presented with a system restart. So once we finish this reboot, we will start the installation of DPM. So go run the setup. Now, the things to remember is if you'd installed SQL on a different box from running internally, you would have to run the DPM remote SQL prep actually on your SQL server. Now we've installed it locally, so we will just install DPM directly. So hit next. For the SQL server, we're going to enter localhost and then press the tab and then check and install, and hopefully if we've done everything right, it should go through first time. Enter your details, hit next. We do not want to do updates for now, and hit install. Let that go through, and then once that's finished, we'll then apply rollup update 4, which is correct at time of recording, which is the 4th of November. Okay, once it's installed, do not, and I repeat, do not open it. Go straight to rollup update 4 and then apply that directly. Try to download the rollup update. Do not install it through Windows Update, because the Windows Update will also pull down updates for SQL, and you don't want to do that. You want to be making sure that DPM is updated first, and obviously through Windows Update you've got no way of reorganizing of what goes first. So download it from the Microsoft catalog and then install it directly. After this point, you could say yes to Windows updates once it's done. But that's okay. And then once that's done, then reboot the box. So we're fully rebooted. So now we can start up the console. So this will be the very first time. And there you go. Now, what we'll do is we'll install an agent. We'll try to push it out. Now, hit add, hit next, give it a domain credential. Now, the one thing you will need to do is to open up ports on the firewall, because otherwise the firewall blocks the installation. So your best method is to set up a GPO to open up the ports across the domain for machines that you're backing up. Just for the purposes of testing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the firewall off for now. Just to show you the agent installation. But I will copy and paste the firewall commands in there. And you see, there we go, it's installing. So we should see a DPM agent. So that's to push the agent out. So what I'll show you now is, as we can see, that is now showing up as OK. So the next thing we need to do is actually give DPM some storage. So all we do is we go to disk storage and we say add. Now at the moment we've got nothing in there. So we add some disks, add some volumes. We can't because we've got nothing presented to the VM, which brings me to my next section. Now, DPM 2016 uses MBS, which is modern block storage. Now, modern block storage allows the DPM to back up using a VHD method. The old style method used NTFS. Now, if you want to use data deduplication, REFS at the time of recording, now I do believe it is coming soon, but REFS does not support dedupe. So therefore, technically, DPM does not support dedupe. Well, what you do is you create an underlying NTFS volume and you enable deduplication on that volume. So DPM is not aware of the deduplication that's occurring. So how do we do that? Well, quite simple. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to present some storage to the VM. At the moment, I don't have dedupe installed on there. So what we need to do is if you go over to your host machine and install the dedupe feature. So we just go to manage, add, next. And there, data deduplication, hit next, and then install. And then we'll be able to enable deduplication on that volume once it's installed. So once that's done, go over to your volumes, find the drive, and if you right click on it, you can then configure data duplication, and we want to enable it. Now we want to enable it as a virtualized backup server, and I want it to deduplicate straight away, so we'll hit 0 on that. And we can also set a schedule. So we can do it as background, which means it only ever dedupes when the system isn't busy, which, to be fair, isn't often. Or you can specify it to dedupe at specified times. So I can say, right, only dedupe during the night. So if we say, right, start at midnight and run for 6 hours, and you can set another one. Hit OK. So if you go back to disks, you'll now see deduplication savings. And that will be your percentage and how much data that you've actually saved. So dedupe is now enabled from an underlying level. So if we now go back to our VM and we want to storage, create a terabyte drive. So I'm going to create another couple of drives. And it might actually be handy to put these on the different controllers as well, if you've got many drives to add. What we can actually do, because we've got a couple of drives to add, is we can put that whole thread in there, copy that, we'll set it at a terabyte, when you add the next one in, new, dynamically expanding, you just call it 2. Add in another one, because what we're going to do is we're going to pull these up. So if we now go over to our disk management, we should see 10 ton of disks, which we do. Good. So go over to storage, storage pools, and we should see our 4 disks. Let's create a pool out of them and call that DPM. Create. Create a virtual disk. So we'll call that vdisk. Now, assuming that these on the host are sitting on a protected method, so if you've got an array controller in there, they're already sitting on a RAID 5 or RAID 1 or whatever, then you would not apply any protection at this layer because it's already protected from the host layer. So we just do simple fixed maximum size, which is 4 terabytes. Create a volume, 4 terabytes, and we will call this DPM under NTFS. We'll put the date to deduplication on it to happen instantly. Set a schedule. Start midnight. Hit apply. Next. Create. So there we have now a 4 terabyte drive that we can present. So go back into storage, rescan. Oh, nothing there. Good. Right, hit add. Add. Yes. And give it a friendly name. So we'll call this dedupe. Because if you're combining it with MBS storage and you have an REFS volume at your host level, you've got no way of determining which is which. So when it actually comes down to creating groups and setting storage, you need the friendly name to identify what you're writing to. So it is important. So hit OK. Right, so let's go back to protection. Hit new. Server. Toss. We will back up just one little folder as a test. Now remember, once you create your protection group name, you cannot change it, so make sure it's named correctly the first time round. Once it's in, it's in. Hit next. Specify how long you want to keep the data for. And there we go. So if you had different types of storage, so MBS and dedupe and so on, you would be able to change where you're writing it to. So hit next. I always run consistency checks regardless because it doesn't take long to do. And also if anything goes out of consistency during the night, it will then get corrected. So set a time for that. And then say create group. Hit close. And there we go, replica creation in progress. So that'll now go off and grab that folder and back it up. If we go over to monitoring, we'll be able to see what's actually going ahead. You can see what jobs are in progress and so forth. I hope you found the video informative, and please do like and subscribe to the channel. I also do videos on Raspberry Pi 3 as well as some tech reviews. If you've got any comments or questions, please do drop them into the descriptions on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter and ask me some questions on there. One of the benefits of writing them out to YouTube is that my fan base will also answer your questions if I'm not available. Um, so please do join in on the conversation. Until next time, see you later.